Hi, welcome to Cozy Living Liz, where we chat about plants and we try and keep the vibes cozy but realistic. So, today I'm going to be doing a bit of a midwinter plant chores kind of video. So, strap in, get your tea or your coffee, whatever works for you, and settle in because it is going to be a long video. So, today I actually have some exciting news to share. I am 30 weeks pregnant. So, I'm in my third trimester with a lovely baby boy. We're very, very excited about this. If you're not interested in any kind of pregnancy update, I will give a timestamp and you can skip to just the plant chores. But for those of you that are interested, I am really excited to post about this. However, I am also a bit nervous. There was a lot of time, money, and um, energy put into getting this baby. So I was a bit nervous, which is kind of one of the reasons why I have waited so long to talk about it. Just because I don't know, I'm very private when it comes to that kind of thing. And I just needed to feel comfortable sharing something like this that is so personal, but also going to be so very public. So I've been thinking about it a lot for the last couple of weeks, and I decided on sharing at 30 weeks just because it's a nice round number, and I was able to think about what I wanted to share. I'm not going to go into any crazy details about my whole pregnancy journey, just because that's not at this point what this channel is about. Although I would love to share more information about that if there is interest. But yeah, so we're really excited. 30 weeks. This is also why I wasn't able to start my channel sooner, even though I really would have liked to, because my first trimester was a bit of a doozy. Very energy sappy and just being constantly feeling like you're just nauseous all the time, plus with a 2-year-old. Anyway, I'm just very, very excited to finally share that information. And let's go ahead and get into the planty things. All right, so like I said, today is going to be a plant chores type of day. I've got a list set up for things that I need to do. So I'm going to move over to my laptop where I am going to screen record my list that I've got in my Notion. So I have just announced my pregnancy. Woohoo! So I'm going to cross that one off. And then looks like the next one I have is my Cebu Blue. Now, I did a video about my Cebu last week. And no, the week before, I think. It doesn't matter. But either way, this Cebu Blue, not done well. It's super ugly. Let me go grab it for you. This is like the most disappointing repot I have ever done. So I watered it after I repotted it. And thank goodness I took all those cuttings, because this is like, what even is this? This is dead. She gone. She croaked. This is going to be compost. So that is our first thing. Now I do want to say I've got some gorgeous cuttings and I've got them right here. So this is the saving grace. I am planning to pot these up in the spring so that I can once again have a full trailing pot, because woof, this, thank goodness I took so many cuttings, because I'm sure some of these won't survive, as is per usual when I take cuttings. But that, like, there were some good roots in here. Some of them were awful, but there were some good roots in here. And so I'm actually surprised that it croaked that badly. But anyway, so we are going to take care of that. This will go back on the shelf and hopefully survive until spring, when I can actually plant her up. So here is my compost bin. And well, sad, this is also going to be satisfying. Look at this. I'm just going to pull it right out. Man, there are chunky roots in here. If only those were, I think some of this got into my tea. Put my tea right here. Yeah, that might have just gotten into my tea. But yeah, I'm just going to pull this out. I think just too many roots rotted. Wow, that is crazy. Okay, I'm happy to get rid of that though. Now it's no longer going to be on my conscience. I've got a full pot of potting soil though. I'm just going to let that dry out, and honestly, I'll probably reuse that. Good riddance. All right, the next thing on our list, cross off my Cebu Bloops, there we go, is Periso Verde Chop and Prop, a new prop box. So this, I guess we're just starting the video off with some really sad plants. It gets better, I promise. So this right here was, oof, hang on. This is my other plant, my fern that we're gonna do a repot. She wants to get in the video. So this is my, Periso Verde. It did actually look really good. It was like growing really, really well, but I think that this one got cold damage. So we're gonna do a chop and prop of this, and we're gonna also start a new prop box. So the only prop boxes I have right now are sphagnum moss, but this one I'm gonna do perlite because I've got a bunch of extra perlite that has just been sitting there, and I need to do something with it. So that's what we're gonna do. So I've got my shears all ready to go, and we're just gonna take care of this right now. And I'm kind of bummed about this one. This was sort of a purchase that I hadn't really thought through. So I don't know. Think your purchases through, guys. Your plant purchases. It gets the best of us, I think. We see something that's really pretty, and sometimes, especially when you're on the internet, it's super easy to just click buy now. Even though you don't necessarily need the plant, but you really want the plant. Anyway, not to give out unsolicited advice or anything, but so I'm just going to take the leaves off of this. This was sitting on my counter, and the other plants were doing okay, actually, on my counter. But this was also the closest to the window, and I think by the window, it was just way too cold for this plant. Now, our weather has been kind of inconsistent, which if you're from Michigan, then like that's just the name of the game. That's how things go. But I think these are really thick stems, actually. So I think I might let them callus over for a little bit before I put them in the propagation box. But all right, those are those. And then we'll do this one. And see how the leaves are just limp? Like they're not crunchy. So I don't think it was root rot. They're just limp. And I've seen that with plants that get cold damage. So I think that's, plus with it being by the window. So I think that that's just what happened, which that's fine. I'm sure it'll come back. I don't really mind chopping this one up. I think that will be fine. When I got it, so I got it beginning of last summer or spring-ish time, and it was just a little itty-bitty plant, but it grew a couple of inches during the summer, and so it was doing pretty well. Even throughout the winter here, it was doing pretty decent, but it just didn't like that spot by the window, I think. So that's okay. This one leaf is actually kind of okay. I might pop this one in my bathroom propagation because it's got this one nice leaf. I might do that just to see what happens. All right, let's get rid of all of these. These can go get composted. I'm gonna go ahead and compost. Ooh, you know what? Maybe some of it did get rotted. I think I've just been over loving my plants this winter, honestly, which, oops, I don't normally do that. Normally I'm like, set it and forget it, and then forget it for way too long. But I am trying to be in my sunroom a little bit more often, so that's probably why, is I'm just seeing and noticing things that need to be watered, and then I'm just kind of loving them a little bit too much. Yeah, the soil on that. Now I've still definitely got some roots, some good roots in here. The soil is a little bit dense though. Might be a little bit dense. But anyway, we are done with that one. These chores are going a little bit faster than I anticipated, which is not a bad thing. All right, and then I wanted to get some perlite and put it in this propagation box. I just rinsed this out. This did have some remnants of sphagnum in it that I had used actually on some Cebu Blue cuttings that I totally forgot about, and then they just weren't good anymore. So I'm going to get some perlite and put some perlite in here. All right, I am 100% gonna hold my breath when I put this in here. All right, so whatever this perlite is that I originally got, I don't recommend it. It is so fine and it's so dusty. I would always recommend a slightly bigger, chunkier perlite if you like to use perlite, because you don't need that much dust. And then if it's that light, it's just all gonna float to the top, which is actually why I stopped using perlite, because I noticed like I would use a lot of perlite in my cactus and succulent mixes, and I would notice that just everything, all of the perlite would always rise up to the surface. And then in my cactuses, it would just be like perlite on top. And then like that's not even doing its job. It's not helping to aerate the soil. It's just on top of the soil. So whatever this is, this superfine perlite, definitely stay away from that if you're going to use it for actually helping to aerate soil. I'm going to go ahead and put these in here. I'm just not going to put the top on. And I'm just going to leave it like that until I'm ready to put those away. But this way, now I have that. I might just pop that leaf in there so I don't forget about it. I'm going to set that one off to the side. I'm really happy that I have gotten that chopped up though, because the worst is when you have a plant that you see that is not doing well and it needs to be either chopped and propped or needs to be repotted or whatever, and then you finally get a chance to do it and the whole plant is just not doing well. It's doing so bad that any help that you try and give it is not worthwhile at that point, and it just ends up being put in the compost or the garbage or whatever. Kind of like my Cebu Blue. I really should have repotted that a lot sooner. All right, so let's go ahead and check Paraiso Verde and New Prop Box off. And the next thing I have is a fern repot. So this is my tiger fern, who's been trying to put her little tentacles in the frame. So this plant lives in my bathroom and is doing quite well. However, she has been getting crispy recently, and I think part of that is because she's outgrown this pot. She has very thin, kind of wiry little tendrils here, and I did have her kind of in a self-watering situation. I'm going to do that again. This pot is just a cover pot. It doesn't have a drainage hole, and I'm going to put this pot in so she'll be a little bit bigger. And then honestly, I don't recommend this for most plants, but because it's a fern, I will let her sit in water and she just soaks it right up. So that's what we're doing for this guy. So let me go get my potting mat, and then I'm going to get my potting soil. I'm going to do my denser potting soil and use that. All right, so this is just some old potting mix that I have from when I used to mix my own. And it's a little bit more dense than I would use with most aroids or Hoya that I have, but it's pretty good for begonia, and I'm thinking it'll be probably pretty good for my fern here because it will keep plenty of moisture locked in, but it's still decently airy. It's got pumice, it's got orchid bark in it. It is pretty dusty though because it's quite dry. But so I'm gonna put some orchid bark down at the bottom so these holes don't immediately just start leaking a bunch of soil everywhere. So I wanted to talk about what it's been like this year for some of my plants. I already kind of mentioned it, that with the weather that we've been having here, my plants have not really enjoyed a lot of that. So this Michigan weather, as you can tell, there's snow behind me. That snow actually fell last night. We had a warm spell where it got up to probably about 62 or 65 this last week, and it was all rainy. So all the snow melted away. It was actually really nice and really sunny. I very much enjoyed the change of weather because before we had been having weather that was in the negatives. So probably like -8. Or at least felt like -8, which is not uncommon. Now we do have a heater in here, helps out a lot, and that means that I can keep my plants in here even when it is really cold. However, that also makes it a little bit difficult for some of the plants that are not very hardy or that are a little bit extra sensitive. So now my son actually just woke up, so I'm gonna go take care of him, and I will come back and finish up this repot when I get the chance. All right, I am back to finish up this repot. Unfortunately, sometimes, I work full-time, and I've got a 2.5-year-old, and so there's really no time where I'm not responsible for my child unless I'm at work. So unfortunately, my time to do videos is on the weekends during his nap, and if he wakes up from his nap, it is my responsibility to go get him, at least when my husband's not home, which was today. So I'm sorry about that, but hopefully one of these days I can have a different situation. That is the dream, where I won't have to be in charge of that, and I'll just have lots more time to, I don't know, do videos or whatever. But basically, I guess what I was on about last time I was talking is that while this has been such an amazing room to have for my plants, things are a little bit difficult during the winter time. Ooh, let's see if that works. I might have put a little bit too much in there. And so I have had to rescue some of my own plants, not just my cebu. I've had to rescue my African violet, which rotted. And I think what's going on is I'll water them because with this heater that we have, it dries out the air a lot. And so my plants, even though it's cold, they're still going through water pretty quickly just because the air is so dry. But then it gets really cold, and then I think that it just makes it for, like, I mean, it's just not a good environment sometimes. And I don't think I've had this issue before because we didn't have a heater, and so I would just bring all of my plants a couple of times. Like when I got into the negatives, I would just bring them all into the kitchen and the dining room, and they would just live there for a couple of days, and then that way they didn't freeze. Or because I just wasn't watering them that often. And so I think I'm going to go back to not watering them as often and see if maybe that helps out a little bit more so that I'm not rotting all of my plants. Because another one of my plants also, I noticed that some of the leaves were yellowing. This is the Hoya pot of gold, or I think it's the Hoya latifolia intervariegated. And I was able to chop that up, and I'm pretty confident about saving that with the cuttings. But then there's also another one, my Hoya calistophylla, that I didn't notice quite so soon. And that one has been horrible rooting up. I had like maybe 4 cuttings from the Hoya calistophylla, or 5. And it just is not, this one is just not rooting up. It's so sad. And that one is in my bathroom propagation. So it's got nice warm air circulating through it, and it's got some sunlight. So that one, like, it shouldn't be that big of an issue. It's got humidity, but I don't know, maybe just the Hoya calistophylla is not an easy plant to reroot. So anyway, that is what is going on with some of my plants right now. So I'm going to try and change around my care a little bit, and hopefully I can figure out what is going on. I'm also kind of taking notes on how each plant is reacting. Like, was this a really hardy plant this year? Did it do really well? And then that way next year, I'm going to record all of this stuff. And then that way next year, I can kind of keep in mind if there was a plant that was like extra finicky, like my African violet, because that one still has not bounced back. And I'm actually thinking about moving that one into my bathroom as well. Even though that one is still potted up in soil, like, I think that one would be okay. But that's like a variegated one that I really don't want to lose. So I'm thinking that maybe then next year I will be able to go back and read my notes that I have on all of these plants. I guess we're maybe getting a little bit plant nerdy in here, but and then hopefully I can, not have so many plants just croaking during Midwinter because I've had quite a few that have just not made it or just not done well, which is really sad. Oh, all right. She is potted. Oh, there's like a gap over. Gosh, those leaves are everywhere. There's a gap right here. Put a little bit more soil over here. I think this fern will probably do pretty well. She lives in my bathroom. I think I mentioned that. On a top shelf. She gets sunlight and she gets water, she gets humidity. I think that has been the best place for her. This is the best. Let me see. One of the best plants that I've grown in tissue culture. I've decided to make kind of a promise. Oh my gosh. I've decided to make a promise to myself to not buy as many tissue culture plants as I have been in the past because so many of them have just not done well for me. And I think it's just, you just have to have the perfect environment for tissue culture plants. However, if you have a plant that has grown a little bit more out to maturity, then they're easier to take care of. They're less fussy. They don't need quite as high of humidity. And I think that just in general, where my life is right now, is probably the best place for me to have plants. If I buy any new plants, like it should be a little bit more established, Like the tissue culture is it's so nice because it's so like there's these rare plants and they're so much easier to have access to because they're cheaper, they're like mass produced at this point, which is really incredible for the plant community to have plants that were previously totally inaccessible to most people. They are now accessible. However, the downside to that is they can be really difficult to take care of if you don't have like the perfect setup. And going into this next chapter of my life with a newborn baby and a toddler this time around, I think it's just not going to be a good idea because I found with humidity plants, like they'll grow great if you have the right humidity setup, but then they outgrow that and you have to acclimate them to a not as high humidity environment. And that's, I think, the part that just really gets me. So, like Syngonium, for an example, I have had multiple Syngonium tissue culture plants, which were so beautiful for a while, but then they became difficult for me to grow because I don't have the right setup for them. And like we just talked about with the weather and it being colder in here, it's just not as good with the younger plants. Whereas I have a cutting of a tricolor that has just grown like a weed, and it was not tissue culture. It was a little bit older. The leaves are much more mature. And it's just growing beautifully. So, well, it's not growing that much right now, but it's a very stable plant. And so I'm looking for more of that, I think, in this season of life so that I'm not looking after grumpy little baby plantlets, Anyway, tangent over. I've got a beautiful fern that has now been repotted. I do love this plant very much. Look how beautiful she is. And this is the tiger fern. So this is like a variegated Boston fern. You can't see the variegation very well, but that's okay. I enjoy it. All right, I guess I'm going to clean up a little bit and then we're going to look at what I have to do next. So just real quick before I move on to the next thing, these propagations that I have in bins have actually been doing pretty well. I do have heated flooring in this room, and I put them directly on the floor. So they do get the heat from the floor. And then as long as I can keep up with making sure that there's water in here, and I'm going to take out this this big leaf right here in a little bit, but not until probably the end of this video. Hopefully I won't forget it's in there. But I'm actually impressed with how well some of these cuttings have been doing during this winter. But I think that's what it is it's just like it's on a heated floor. So it's getting that nice warmth and it's growing because of that. Or the plant cuttings are growing because of that. So anyway, hack, if you have a heated floor, just use it for plant cuttings. All right, so we are back at my Notion checklist. And so we can check off my fern repot. And then the next thing that I have on my list is to wash my dirty pots. I have a bunch of dirty pots, basically just they've got dirt in them, and I've either had plants in them that I composted or plants that I uppotted or repotted. So I would like to clean those up a bit so that I can put them away. I suppose I probably could just throw some of the plastic ones away, but I really try my best not to do that. I try to be a more environmentally friendly person when I can. I know there are some situations where I just can't, but if there's something where I can, I try and do my best to be consistent enough and take care of, in this case, my pots well enough that I can use them over and over and over again. I have the clear plastic pots that I like so that you can see the roots and the root growth, which is great, but it is plastic. So if I can just, use it as many times as I can before I have to throw it away, then I feel like that's a good goal to have, I guess, when it comes to indoor gardening, because you would think that indoor gardening would be a lot more environmentally friendly than it actually is in a lot of different areas. So anyway, I'm going to wash some of those, and then the next thing I have on my list is to clear off my counter. And I don't know, I'm one of those people that if there is a surface that can be covered in stuff, normally it gets covered in stuff. I try to be better, but I'm human and have some bad habits. So I'm going to try and clear things off a little bit. I think at this point, mostly it is just the pots. I just went through a little bit off camera and took off some like random stuff. Like we had a dog toy on there that was supposed to be a Christmas present, but never got delivered. And I don't remember why. But anyway, let's get on to washing out some pots. And then there is one last thing that I have on my list, and that is to clean out underneath the counter sink area. It's quite cluttered underneath there. There's some towels that need to be washed, but I don't think I'm going to get around to that this time. I think that will have to wait for my next plant room, sunroom cleanup, just because I am running out of time a little bit today. So I was really hoping to get to it, but I think that is just not going to happen. As long as I can clear off the counter here a little bit better and clean up those pots, I think that we are in pretty good shape and that we have accomplished a good amount of things today. All right, now I will say the last time that I did a plant room clean out, I have actually kept my underneath counter successfully pretty clean. So I am quite proud of myself for that. Hopefully we can kind of continue the trend of keeping things. Maybe this time I can keep things off the counter. We'll see. We'll see. Probably not. All right, well, now that I have all of these pots rinsed off and drying, I think I'm gonna go ahead and close out the video. So I can check off my last 2 items on the list that I was going to get done today, which was my washing and clearing off the counter. So I feel good. I feel like we have accomplished quite a bit today. So that is good. I feel like that's good for a nice little midwinter cleanup here. Let me know in the comments below how your plants are doing this winter. I would love to know. I hope I'm not the only one that's struggling a little bit. Just to commiserate, I guess. I don't hope that your plants are, I hope your plants are thriving. I hope they're doing way better than mine. All right. Have a great evening or a great rest of your day, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.